West Asia is on the edge. Will Iran agree to a deal? With 8.5 hours left for his deadline, American President Donald Trump has issued a fresh threat. He's warned that a whole civilization will die tonight. Even as the suspense over Iran's move continues, America and Israel have intensified their strikes against Iran. And in fact, in a major escalation, the U.S. military carried out additional strikes on military targets on the Kharg island today. It handles 90% of Iran's oil exports. As a result, Brent crude prices jumped to $110.22 US per barrel, while American Vice President J.D. Vance triggered speculation by saying that U.S. forces have tools in their toolkit which they haven't decided to use yet. The White House has clarified that it is not planning to use nuclear weapons against Iran. Early in the morning, residents of Tehran woke up to sounds of loud explosions. Footage showed thick smoke billowing into the sky from the scene. As per Iranian state media, Israeli and American strikes resulted in the death of at least 9 people in the Shahryar city, 6 people in Tabraiz and 18 others in Al-Borz province. Israel launched yet another wave of strikes on Iran's infrastructure sites. For instance, it struck a petrochemical complex in Shiraz, which the IDF claimed was one of the few remaining sites in Iran for producing chemical components for explosives and materials for ballistic missiles. In fact, the IDF also claimed to have struck 8 bridge segments used by Iran's military to transport weapons and military equipment in several areas, including Tehran, Kharg, Tabraiz, Kerman, and Qom. Israel attacked railway-related infrastructure in 4 provinces today. For instance, an airstrike hit the railway line in Kharg, leaving some people with injuries there. Now, apart from Kharg, Iranian state media reported destruction of railway bridges in Kashan and Zanjan. Rail infrastructure in Qazvin was struck as well. Israeli-American strikes targeted a train station in Mashhad as well and a highway bridge on the Tabriz-Tehran freeway. Tehran's Mehrabad airport was struck early this morning. Footage showed multiple fires raging and thick plumes of smoke emanating from the airport's vicinity. As per Iran, a synagogue in Tehran was destroyed in airstrikes. On the other hand, the Iranian military has warned that it would retaliate beyond West Asia and target infrastructure in West Asia to deprive America and its allies of oil and gas. For years, remember, if America crossed the red line. Iran has also warned that it is prepared to plunge West Asia into darkness if U.S. attacks Iran's power stations. It has also threatened to close the Bab al-Mandeb Strait if the situation gets out of control. Tehran's retaliation continued in full swing, with the IRGC launching missiles like Fateh and Khyber Shekhan from dual launchers for the first time. It attacked the Jubail petrochemical complex, which is the heart of Saudi Arabia's energy sector and home to multi-billion-dollar joint ventures. Visuals showed missiles striking this facility, which accounts for nearly 7% of the world's global petrochemical output. Israel continued as well to bear the brunt of Iran's retaliatory attacks. The damage was caused in various Israeli cities due to missiles fired by Tehran. In fact, in a big snub to Trump, who has threatened to destroy Iranian power plants and bridges, the people of Tabraiz formed a human chain today in front of the thermal power plant in the city. As this war rages on, the human cost of the conflict has been growing. The casualties continue to mount. Iran's death toll has now surged over 3,500. On the other hand, 13 U.S. military personnel have died and 200 others have been injured. Israel's intensified attacks have resulted in close to 1,500 deaths in Lebanon so far. with the Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian declaring that 14 million people, including himself, are ready to sacrifice their lives in the West Asian war, it is now apparent that Tehran isn't in a mood to compromise anytime soon. As the countdown to Trump's deadline has begun, Iran's next steps will be closely awaited by the entire world. All right, moving on. The 4 astronauts on NASA's Artemis II mission circled the moon. They went farther than any human in decades, past the moon into history. Our next story brings you the latest from this epic journey.
Inside the capsule, emotions surged. Years of planning, months of training, decades of ambition, all culminating in a single, breathtaking passage through space. Outside the window, the moon slipped by, grey, silent, unforgiving. Then the Earth appeared, a small blue glow in the distance.
We saw Earth disappear. Earth set, but we were so busy with the science, and we have such faith in our vehicle integrity, such faith in mission control, that we were just at complete peace and just doing our job, and just trying to do a good job to collect as much science data as we could while we were on the far side of the moon.
He's being a bit humble, but as soon as we went out of comm with Planet Earth, we did have maple cookies as we just gathered together for about 30 seconds. Each one of us had a maple cream cookie and then right back into the science. But we had to take a moment to honor that time going behind Earth.
After traveling deeper into space than any other humans, the Artemis II astronauts pointed their spaceship towards home, wrapping up a lunar cruise that revealed views of the far side of the moon never beheld by eyes until now. The crew of the Artemis II have broken a record held since Apollo 13, the farthest distance from Earth ever reached by a human crew. A significant step towards landing boot prints near the moon's south pole in less than 3 years. The mission carried historic firsts as well. Glover became the first person of color to fly around the moon. Koch became the first woman. Hansen became the first non-American. They are no longer just astronauts. They are the bridge between the Apollo era and a future where the moon is not a destination, but a home base. US President Donald Trump has urged NASA to get boots on the lunar surface before his second term ends in January 2029. Bureau Report, WION. World is One.
The energy shock triggered by West Asian war is now rapidly reshaping the global energy landscape, and China is emerging as one of its biggest economic beneficiaries. As oil and gas markets turn volatile, governments across Asia, Europe and beyond are now accelerating their transition toward renewable energy and electric mobility. The surge in fossil fuel prices has exposed vulnerabilities in energy security, particularly for countries that are heavily dependent on imports. In response, both policymakers as well as consumers are shifting faster toward alternatives like solar power, batteries and EVs. China sits at the center of this transition. It dominates global supply chains for clean energy technologies, producing the majority of the world's solar panels, wind turbines, batteries, and EVs. Even before this latest crisis, exports of these technologies were rising sharply in early 2026. The current energy disruption is now only amplifying that momentum. Major Chinese companies are already seeing tangible gains. Battery giant CATL has recorded a sharp rise in its share prices across both Hong Kong and Shenzhen listings since the escalation in the tensions. Meanwhile, EV leader BYD has reported a significant jump in the overseas sales, with exports and international deliveries climbing strongly year over year. Solar manufacturer Jinko Solar has also reported increased global shipments as demand rises. EVs now account for more than 10% of total car sales in 39 countries, which is up sharply from just 4 back in 2019. Emerging markets are driving this growth. Affordable electric models, particularly from Chinese manufacturers, are gaining global traction. In markets with access to low-cost EVs, the cost advantage over internal combustion engine vehicles is widening faster. Countries like Brazil are already emerging as key markets for Chinese EV exports. In fact, even consumer interest is reflecting this trend, with online searches for EV models and used electric cars hitting peak levels since the conflict began. Electric vehicles now make up more than 50% of new passenger vehicle sales in China. The auto sector itself accounts for roughly 40% of the country's total oil consumption, meaning the transition could significantly curb future demand.
Once war breaks out, oil gets expensive and prices rise right away. But with electric vehicles, electricity prices more or less stay the same. Even if they change, it's only by a small amount. Oil, on the other hand, can go up by 1 or 2 yuan at a time. That makes a big difference. Now, fuel vehicles are getting too expensive to run. With freight rates being low, people can't afford to keep them on the road.
Now, the underlying driver is simply higher fuel costs that are accelerating the economic case for electrification. In China, where transport accounts for a large share of oil demand, the rapid adoption of EVs is already helping cushion the economy from crude price spikes. While the country still depends heavily on imported oil, it is expanding the EV fleet. Remember, it is only reducing exposure to shocks in road transport, which is one of the biggest sources of oil consumption. At the same time, Chinese manufacturers are scaling aggressively to meet the rising international demand. In Southeast Asia, where fuel import dependence is high, countries are now turning to EVs and solar installations to reduce costs and improve energy security. Indonesia has announced massive solar expansion plans, while the Philippines is supporting household solar adoption through financing schemes. Europe is stepping up investments as well, with countries like Germany increasing spending on wind energy and EV subsidies.